And welcome everybody to Flight Past. My name is Simon, and this is a history podcast using Microsoft Flight Simulator to have a look at key moments in history from the air, so we get a unique perspective on the distances and terrain of these key historical moments. And at the moment we're looking at D-Day. We're on the North French coast on the Cotentin Peninsula, and today we'll be looking at the 82nd Airborne and their role on specifically D-Day itself. The operation was called Operation or Mission Boston. We've already looked at the 101st Airborne. We looked at their operation, which was Albany, which was in this area to the east of Sainte-Mère-Église, but the 82nd Airborne was tasked with objectives mainly to the west of Sainte-Mère-Église. This is the route we're going to take today. We're going to fly in the Huey across the route they would have taken. We'll have a look at some of the drop zones in the area to the west of Sainte-Mère-Église, and then we'll look at a couple of the objectives, and we'll end up flying down to Caratan and then to this place called Gran, Montmartin en Gran. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And this was where the furthest misplaced drop of paratroopers occurred. So, without further ado, as they say in YouTube parlance, let's get jiggy with it. Feel free to ask any questions. If you've got anything that you know or about this part of the history, then let me know and I'll address it in future episodes. So I'm going to fly this now, and we'll see how we get along. Let's just get my notes up. Now, we did a whole section on the approach that they would have taken from England in their C-47s, and with a bit of research we found out that our presumption that there was some sort of beacon, a Eureka beacon or signal somewhere out in the channel, I think proved to be correct. And what happened is that they had a boat. Let's just get this. They had a boat out in the channel. It might have been a buoy or a buoy, or it was an anchored boat. And let's just get the map up here. It was in somewhere in the region between Alderney, which is this island here, and Guernsey, and it had a code name called Holophane, and it was where they sort of used to approach, and then they would take a bearing from that. Now we know that the 101st Airborne actually crossed the land down here in this uniquely shaped bay, which made it easy for them to see. But the 82nd Airborne approached here on this peninsula, which we're about to cross in a second. So let's do that. This was codenamed Peoria, Peoria, and it crossed between. There's a little town called Les Pieux, and this is where they came across on the night. So this feature here would have been easier to spot, and that makes sense. 82nd Airborne was the most experienced airborne unit. They had been, the 505th had been in Sicily and Italy with the 504th. The 504th hadn't made it back in time to participate, so this operation was conducted by the 505th, 507th and 508th. So we'll follow this magenta line all the way into the objective. I love seeing each day a few subscribers more. The channel only just started, and we've been trying to do a video or a series of videos of this, like these every week. So you, if you enjoy this content, then please like and subscribe. We're on 10 at the moment, and I really want to be ambitious. I think we could probably get to 15. Maybe by the end of the month, but we don't know. I just appreciate that anybody likes to listen to this stuff. So the 82nd Airborne, commanded by well, it was divided into 3 sections for the mission. There was A, B and C. Force A was basically this force we're in now, flying in. You can see on the scroll down below a list of all the aircraft, the information I found on the serials and the where they were flying from. This Force A is commanded by Brigadier General James Gavin, also known as Jumping Gavin, because he liked to jump with his troops, and he used to be the commander of the 505th, and so he would jump with the 505th today on D-Day. I get a picture of him as well. That's him, looking rather snaz. Force B was the gliders that will be coming in later in the day. I gotta remember, we should really be flying here at night at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Gliders will be coming in 2 waves at 3 and 9 the next day. They were commanded by General Ridgway, the overall commander. He will be coming in with the gliders on that day. So James Gavin is basically the second in command of the whole 82nd Airborne. And Force C, that was hello, Lenny. Good to see you. That reminds me, we're live. We're on the West European server. So if you got Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can join me and check out a few of the sites. Yeah, so Force C was a seaborne element. They will be coming in with the main invasion fleet, and they would be commanded by George Powell. Okay, so as you can see, it's quite featureless terrain. Every town looks the same. It has a church in it. It has, yeah, they're not very distinctive villages. The rivers are small, hard to see. The hills are low, so you can see why a lot of the time these guys, when they were coming in, didn't hit their drop targets, and there's a number of reasons for that. The main one, of course, is night time. So regardless of what else was happening, it would have been a difficult job to do at night, and it's one of the reasons why they insisted on doing a daytime drop on Market Garden, Operation Market Garden in September. Let's change the scroll, see if we can find something else for you to look at. Yeah, let's look at this. These are the regiments. So the leader, so because the 82nd was the, I suppose, senior Airborne Division, the one with the most experience, they were given the task which was deemed the most riskiest. So they were jumping further west, further away from the beach, and they so they were the furthest, and because they were the furthest away, they were deemed therefore to be the first troops to meet any counterattack that the Germans might put up. The 505th actually, though, were pretty well experienced, especially their Pathfinders. Their Pathfinders were coming in at about 20 past 1. Of course, the other thing, of course, with the 82nd, they were jumping after the 101st. So this makes it even more riskier for them because yeah, the Germans have been alerted, you know, and they're now expecting more. But the 505th, because of their experience and the Pathfinder's experience, managed to get their Eureka beacon set up. They found the drop zone, and with these Holophane lamps as well, they signalled where each regiment would each battalion would form up to. And and as you can see on this map here, this is the 82nd drops. Each one of these is a stick, and you can see that the red ones are quite clumped around the north west of Sainte-Mère-Église, and 75% of these sticks landed in the within, I think, about 2 miles of the drop zone. Okay, so we are approaching the area. What we have below us here, just to the right off the nose, is drop zone T. We'll come back and circle back to this area later. Drop zone T was where the 507th came down. Drop zone N is to the south over there, and just on the other side of this river we should see the drop zone O. Now this is the railway line coming below us, and what we can see ahead of us now is Sainte-Mère-Église, and this area on the other side of the river, but between this river and Sainte-Mère-Église, this is drop zone O, and so this is where the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment would drop. This is Sainte-Mère-Église. As you can see, the drop zone is not too far away, and this is the main objective of the 82nd Airborne. Ignore this modern road, this is a bypass here. The 82nd Airborne's main objective on D-Day was to capture this town, because it was a vital crossroads of several major roads. This is circle background. Really enjoying this Huey. It's by Tail Hanger. Really good. So the whole drop involved about 369 aircraft, and as I say, they will be going backwards and forwards in 3 waves over the course of the day. The Pathfinders would land, and they would set up their Eureka beacons and these Holophane light signals. They were almost like, I think they lit them, and this meant that the lead C-47s could use their Rebecca receivers to hone in on the zone. And because of these Pathfinders were so experienced from Sicily and Italy, this was one of the most successful drops around here. Pathfinders would jump in at about half an hour before the main drop, and the first drop was scheduled to come in about 10 minutes after the 101st finished dropping to the east, a little bit further away. And each serial would come in up with about a 6-minute interval. Each stick was about 15 to 18 men. Okay, let's the 82nd, as say, weren't too far away from Sainte-Mère-Église and actually managed to capture it at around about 4:30 in the morning. We spoke about Richard Winters and his he landed at around about 1 o'clock, 1:30, and pushed on through Sainte-Mère-Église at 3 o'clock. So all of these guys were aware of other objectives, and so that they could be use their initiative. So obviously Winters must have felt that he wasn't needed here. He pushed on to his own objective, which was the exits to the causeways. 82nd then anyway take over, and what they do is they push basically as the troops sort of organised, they pushed up the 2nd Battalion of the 505th. They moved them up here, north of the town, and they basically one single platoon, the 3rd platoon of D Company of the 505th, put in a blocking position around this point here to the north. Let me just jump out here. We have a quick scooch around. Yeah, so they put in some defensive positions up here, and they mid-morning they came under attack from 2 companies of the 1058th Grenadier Regiment, and they were coming down from a place called Nouveau au Plan. And so this one company delays these 2. So one platoon delays 2 companies from getting to into Sainte-Mère-Église. They repel the threat for something like 8 hours. They also had a block the routes coming from the south. All right. Let's head over to drop zone T. So drop zone T was one of the more disorganized drops. If I can find this is the Merderet River, and this is the railway line. So drop zone T is this way. We'll head to the northwest. Now, it's all very green here right now. Let me just pause here, jump out. The Merderet River was actually flooded, so all this green area here is flooded. And drop zone T was where the 507th were coming in. Now the Pathfinders, from what I read, landed successfully in this area here, and but because they had Germans nearby, they couldn't set up their marker lights, and so many of the C-47s trying to locate this drop zone failed. And only, I believe, 3 sticks land actually in this area. A lot of them overshoot and land into this flooded area beyond the drop zone. So let's have a look at the notes. So you can see a lot of them was pushed further to the east. It's not known accurately how many drowned, but you can imagine that, if you've got heavy equipment, you're weighing over 100 pounds, 100 to 150 pounds, and you land in water, and you might be in a slight dip or whatever, you can see how you might struggle to extricate yourself from your parachute. It's believed that about 185 overall losses on D-Day from the 82nd. So the estimates about how many were actually drowned in these sort of swampy areas ranges from a few to 20s, 10s, but the main thing as well is they were losing their equipment. So if the equipment came down, especially they have these leg bags in these swampy areas, you're just not going to find them again. And you can see how this is a little bit dipped, and you can see the rise up to the drop zone there. And so a lot of these guys on this area were coming down on the 101st drop zone area, further to the east, and that's why you hear a lot of the time that like Dick Winter says he meets up with lots of 82nd guys because they basically got overshot. This is the area as well that jumping Gavin, James Gavin, came down in, and he would head down to the south and meet up with elements of the 505th down at the bridge at Les Pieux. Let's go in now and have a look at the 508th drop zone, which was labelled N. Huey. Whoa. Okay, reset. There we go. So, let's find the river again. Yeah, so this is just circle here. I'm just going to try and locate myself again. It's very easy to get lost on this this map. Okay. So we want to go. Let's head this way. We should pick up the river. Okay, so below us is Amfreville. Ahead of us is the bridge at La Fière, which we're going to come back to in a second. So let's just skirt around to the right here. And you can see out the window there. This is the area of drop zone N. Let's just pause here. So yeah, so let's see where we are. Okay, so we've got in the distance there is Sainte-Mère-Église. We've got Amfreville here to our north, and so the drop zone is this area here. And this is where the 508th were targeting. And let me just change the scroll. The 508th, they had a lot of problems coming into this area. The cloud bank, the Pathfinder aids weren't working, and flak, all these sort of things meant that a lot of these people missed the target. Only 25% of the 508th came down within a mile of this drop zone. So half of the regiment weren't available for their objectives, which we can see going along the bottom there. So down to the south here, we can see the villages of Piqueville and Etienneville, and this is where the a first lieutenant called Branham, he was from the headquarters company of the 3rd Battalion of the 508th, so he came down over here, and he's trying to get back to where he should be, back up to the north. And this is when he meets a car that's speeding towards Piqueville, and he wanted the car, and he stepped out in front of it and shot this guy. And it turned out he shot General Wilhelm Folly. He was a divisional commander. So he was in charge of the 91st Air Landing Division, and so he turns out he was the most senior German officer to be killed on D-Day. Okay, let's head back now to La Fière. So we'll just do a quick fly along the river. So the major objective, of course, was Sainte-Mère-Église. The second major objective was to seize and capture these bridges on the Merderet. And it's a similar sort of thing to Pegasus Bridge on Lyon. They wanted to capture them intact so that, and defend them, so that they deny the control of the bridges to the Germans. And then once the build-up on the beaches, which were ahead of us here, got to a certain stage, they can then change those defensive positions to an offensive position. There was two bridges on the Douve that they wanted to destroy, but these ones were to be captured. And this one here is La Fière. There's a bridge at one end, and you can see this road here, which is a causeway. This whole area was flooded because the Germans had shut a lock down at Caratan. And as you can see, there's not many crossings here. The next bridge is this one which we're going to come up to where those white buildings are, and that's Chef-du-Pont. So let's and this is Chef-du-Pont here. As you can see, this whole area is very exposed, and it turns out that the main threat and push was coming from Lafayette. So they could bring troops from Chef-du-Pont up to Lafayette to support it. So let's find the scroll. Let's do the morning of Lafayette, which would be here. Okay, so the hamlet of let's just take a little bit of a break here, and then we'll talk about the Battle of Lafayette. I'm just going to grab a glass of water and I'll be back in a second.